first thing is to actually approve the agenda. It was like Brenda was sending all the documents out, I think yesterday, if not before. I would ask anybody if they have any additional requests to add to the agenda at this time. Okay. Hearing no requests, we'll just approve the agenda and proceed to the next item, which is the approval of the minutes of the November 17th meeting. Again, they were emailed out as well. Does anybody have any questions about that? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the same.
I'll move that we approve the minutes as they have been sent out to us.
Judge Hill made the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Jessica Glendinning. Any discussion? Okay, we'll do this by voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Looks like the ayes have it, so we'll note the minutes are approved. Next item is review and approve recommendations of the Assessment Selection Committee, and I'm going to turn it over to Jessica Domi.
Good afternoon. How are all of you? The Assessment Selection Committee met this morning after doing some preliminary discussion with some of our stakeholders. And I don't think they've joined us for this meeting, but we came up with some recommendations that we would like to present to the full commission for approval. Recall that this is the issue that was referred to us was recommending the thresholds for those individuals who might be granted substance abuse treatment as part of a Senate Bill 123 plus program, meaning that it's not a drug offense, but it would be a qualifying low-level offense, 7 through 10, based on the criminal history categories. And then those individuals may be eligible for drug abuse treatment, depending on the thresholds that we determined. And so, Scott, would you mind going ahead and throwing up that flow chart as I explain it that you created? Thank you. So as you may remember, we have the diversion form right now, where it's that first box you have there for the female population. We have the WARNA. For the male population, we have the LSCMI. And those are the thresholds for those programs. As it's explained there for the diversion, the females must have a mid-range of moderate to high risk and high SASE. The next column that's got put in this graph is a Senate Bill 123 program. So currently our Senate Bill 123 program for our female population, if they have a composite score of medium to high risk and high on the SASE, and then our male population is listed there, high to very high on the LSCMI and high on the SASE. So we use that, the subcommittee used that as our basis to determine qualifications for those who may receive drug treatment program under this new legislative initiative. And that would be the same. So for our female population, though, we wanted to, we're thinking of this as a funnel, okay? So the first thing is that the individual must have a medium to high risk composite score on the WARNA, and they must have a threshold score for consideration of treatment need. That need the subcommittee is working on, but we believe it is properly identified on the WARNA as a history of 6 and above, the history score of substance abuse of 6 and above, or the recent use of score of 4 and above. Now, there are some technical issues we're looking at as to how court services, when they run those risk needs assessment, the assessment, the score that they see sometimes is just flagged and they don't see the actual score. So they flag it for 6 and above as the need for treatment. We're trying to work with Ashley and with Spence to make sure that we're identifying whether we need to make some tweaks to that program or if we're properly saying the history or recent scores. And then that would give us like this, okay, so we start with the medium to high risk, but then if on that WARNA, they're scoring in the substance abuse domain with either 6 or above or 4 and above on the recent substance abuse scale, Then they would go on to do the SASE. And if they scored high on the SASE, then they would qualify for Senate Bill 123 like drug treatment program. So again, we're funneling down from must have the same requirements as Senate Bill 123. Then we're looking at a second layer of the substance abuse domains on the assessments. And this is done post-conviction pre-sentence. So just like court services does now with Senate Bill 123, they would screen them, run those scores. If they're hitting on those, then they would go on and get the SASE for the court to have to consider. For the male population, we are looking at the LSCMI. On that, there is one alcohol and drug problem subscale domain area. We looked at the scoring on that and also consulted with the subject matter experts, and the male population would have to have a high or very high score on the LSCMI, which is what they do for Senate Bill. And on the domain for the alcohol and drug problems, they would have to have medium and above, which is 4. Medium is actually 3 to 4, but 4 is the top of that scale. So we do 4 and above for those. If they have a 4 and above on that domain, then they would go on to get the SASE, again, that funnel approach. They're high on the SASE, then they could qualify for the Senate Bill 123 plus program. I know there's probably a lot of details and extra information that I left out there. I'm just trying to summarize what the subcommittee decided to recommend. And Scott put this little flow chart together for us to be able to show you today. What additions do the other members of the subcommittee have that I've left out? Anything important? Shelley, Spence, Pat? What questions do the committee members have? Oh, Scott, yes.
I just wanted to make sure that those members were aware that as far as when she's talking about the those domain scores, for example, with the WRNA, there are 2 substance abuse scales, one that's for history, one that's for recent that she mentioned, and we're talking about 6 and 4. On the history scale, there are 11 questions, so they would have to score 6 and above, 6 out of 11 or higher. On the recent, there's 7, so 4 or higher out of that 7. And then similarly with the alcohol drug problem subscale, there is, and Spence, you can correct me if I'm wrong, there's 8 on the LSCMI and 9 on the LSIR that is still being done. So that would be, you would be scoring 4 and above on those out of that 8 or 9 number of questions. Does that sound right, Spence?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, that's all I had.
Thank you, Scott. I'll see if there are questions from the commission on this recommendation. Seeing
Anybody have any
none.
questions?
Since this is a subcommittee, I guess we would bring it as a report and ask for approval.
Okay. There's no questions. Anybody want to move to approve the proposal as presented by Jessica's committee?
I would so move. To tell you the truth, I really like this approach. It seems very reasonable how you've structured it, and I think it's a good idea. So I would so move.
Okay, Judge.
Second, Boog.
Boog has made the second, okay. Any other further discussion? Scott, did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that the proposal that we're proposing is that we like the criteria or the threshold that's been done. We also then have the issue of the bill itself to make sure that that we're okay recommending the bill as drawn up right now. And so I don't know whether you want to do that in this motion or take it up in another one.
Well, I guess we could go ahead and see, assuming we adopt the proposed bill, this would be the attachment. I think since we're already got a motion pending, we can do that and then go, obviously if the bill doesn't go forward, that we won't go anywhere, but I think we can go ahead and vote on this. Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Is there any opposed? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jessica, and the committee. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the approval of the legislative proposals, and we will start with the expanding 123 treatment, we just discussed about. And Scott, I'll turn it over to you to discuss the proposal.
You're on mute, Scott.
Sorry, thank you. So this is part and parcel of what the Assessment Selection Committee was trying to do as far as digging down further. This is the bill itself that is now presented as 23 RS 122. This is what the system that the revisor's office uses for bill introductions and how they track things. I know that I think Jason and Natalie are on here. I again want to thank them for their willingness to work with us on all of these bills. These two in particular, the next two that we're covering. That it's taken a few back and forth to do that, but their expertise is unmatched as far as I'm concerned. So we're getting the best of the best as far as the language of this particular proposal. So just to give you an idea, this is the Senate Bill 123 statute in 2168-24. What this effectively does, as we've discussed before, is it keeps the Senate Bill 123 language, of course, the same, but we are actually adding now offenders that would be in non-drug classifications levels 7 through 10. That would be those that are 7C through 7I, 8C through I, 9C through I, 10C through I, for mandatory treatment if they follow through the assessments, much like the Senate Bill 123. And that's kind of why I just threw that out there being Senate Bill 123 plus, because we're adding or expanding to the non-drug grid. So those would be mandatory treatment, just like many of the Senate Bill 123 lower level felonies for possession are right now. It also then covers 7, 8, 9, 10 A and B classifications, and those are the discretionary placements. Much like it's the same. Jason basically copied the same language that we had from the Senate Bill 123, only we're using those higher levels, A's and B's, 7 through 10, so that the court, if the court believes in their opinion that this individual needs treatment and that there's not a public safety risk, then they can actually be sentenced as well into the program. So that is the main chunk of the amendment, and then of course down here we have if I can find it. Well, for purposes of time, we do have the provision that is still in there that indicates that here it is, that the criteria is for these programs then would be set by the Sentencing Commission, which we are doing. So that's unchanged, and that's why we went ahead with the extra step of referring it to the Assessment Selection Committee to try and marshal that this type of criteria prior to, because I knew for sure if we went through this that the legislative committees would be asking, well, what exactly will be the criteria for this? So that is that one is actually for consideration, and it is, like I said, it's unchanged for the most part, but that's this particular bill.
Thank you, Scott. Does anybody have any questions for Scott on this, or anybody on this particular proposed bill or change? Okay. I'll entertain a motion to approve the draft language for the expansion of 123 to level 7 to 10 as presented today.
I will so move.
So moved.
Judge Sexton will
I'll
get
second.
who's second.
Dupree.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any further discussion?
Judge, I just one question on a practical term on this. And I don't have the grids in front of me. Is a level 7 probation term I believe is 24 months currently. Is that correct, Scott?
It depends. Where are we at? Yeah, we are. You're right. Sorry.
So if it's a Senate bill case, would that change? Would it still be a 24-month probation with the term of treatment not to exceed 18 months, or would it follow the same as current Senate bill drug cases for 18 months of probation?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that we have the same language in the statute already. I would probably, I guess, toss it to Jason and see what his thoughts are as far as do you think that there's language enough to cover that that indicates it's similar language. It's the same language for 123 that it would cover that as well.
Scott, yeah, this is Jason Thompson. It looks like under 6824C, the term of treatment shall not exceed 18 months. So that seems to be your treatment issue, but the terms of probation would be controlled by the rest of the grid statutes, I think. So to Spence's point, those could be different. That's the way I see it so far.
So my thinking is you would still do a 24-month probation. They would be under the 123 treatment, but that would still just not exceed 18 months. So, but the term would still stay the same. I just wanted to make sure that was still the case.
Okay. Any other questions with that explanation? Okay, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Is there any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. We'll show that that's been passed. Okay, Scott, let's go to the next one, the earned discharge issue.
Okay, so this is one that, if you recall, we were working with Natalie on. This is based upon probation settings in which we've kind of gone back and forth in terms of how to structure certain incentives that could be made for offenders that are on supervision. As you know, we have quite a bit of incentives through program credit, good time credit for incarcerated individuals, and this was an attempt to further incentivize those on probation to be successful and perhaps even complete early. And so this particular changes, I wanted to make sure we had discussions, if you recall, last meeting, because there were some questions that the revisor's office has. What I would tell you is, if I can find it here. So one of the issues was that Natalie made the changes as follows based upon the conversation or the discussion with the commission. Changing subsection D to apply when low-risk defendants have completed at least 50% of their original supervision term. And so language has been inserted to reflect that. Making the 50% hearing apply to any defendant regardless of risk level. And then as well as making the supervision officer recommendation provision apply only to moderate and high risk offenders that we discussed, and adding the community safety interest as a consideration. And so those were the items that were of interest to the members last meeting that are included in here.
Okay, any questions for Scott? Again, we did talk about this at some length last time, and these are the corrections or modifications made after we discussed the matter at the last meeting. Does anybody have any comments or questions about the proposal?
Judge, if I can,
Okay, go ahead.
I asked this last time, and I just want to clarify, because honestly, I just don't remember. Part of it in here is that no extension, the probation shall not be passed twice the original supervision term. Is that no matter what, if we have a defendant that still has programming left to do, another 3 months of treatment, and they've reached their 24 months of probation after a year of probation sentence, that they shall still be terminated even if they have things due? Or can that be addressed some way? Because when I read this, it looks like no matter what, at twice the period they have to be released.
Natalie, do you have any thoughts on that?
Sure. Thanks, Scott. So I think that is the way that the bill reads right now, whether you want that to be the policy or not, but yes, I think it won't be able to go more than twice the original term. And then the corresponding for misdemeanors, I think is up there in subsection A, and that can't be more than 2 years at the outset, and then it could be a 2-year extension.
I guess I would just have concerns with that section. If we still have people that are may have failed to do treatment for one reason or another, or have other programming. I guess the only options would be that we would file a motion to revoke their probation. And I guess it could be, and the judges or other attorneys can speak to this, but if it's revoked and then reinstated for a new probation term, would that satisfy this, or could it only be for the double? I'm just concerned if they're doing treatment, our only recourse is to file a motion to revoke versus trying to extend if they're working on it.
Well, do you do that in a restitution setting as well, Spence?
For restitution, currently you can extend that. But I think also, currently if they've got other conditions that they're still working on, we extend, but this will limit that time.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
This subsection applies to non-support of a child. Is there another subsection that talks about the felony? Or is this it? Because the first sentence is if the defendant is convicted of non-support of a child. So to me, this subsection is just for non-support of a child. Am I wrong, Natalie?
No, you aren't wrong. So that's the only situation in which that would count for. The lead-in for the entire subsection is a little bit further, but it's just the generic lead-in. Yeah.
So that's subsection 8 right below. Thank you for scrolling up. I don't know if that was
sorry about
we did
that.
have a thank you. What if we added language in here that said unless the court determines, it would be, I don't know, something after that, like a comma, unless otherwise ordered or further ordered by the court or something else. I don't know. Just to address that, the revoking and reinstating is still serving a term of probation, so that's going to cap out. So reinstatement isn't a new term. It's part of that. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's a fundamental issue here. There are some defendants, whether they're just lack of ability or whatever, could conceivably, they're not worth revoking. but they need to, let's talk about somebody with a mental illness of some sort. They need to be supervised, and there'll always be something left to do. And the question really becomes is, if we really want them to do that, we may need more than twice the original term to do it. And I hear from a lot of people saying, well, we need to put some term, we can't keep them on probation forever. And I tend to agree that we don't want to do that. But do we need a special out for special circumstances so that they can be extended if you don't want to revoke them, but they need services and you don't want to abandon them and in the process? I tend to look at probation officers as a resource for defendants as opposed to a law enforcement monitor to catch them. And do you want to pull that resource away from them and let them fail so that you can rearrest them and start over, or do we want to keep probation going if we have to? So maybe there should be a special out. Maybe you can deal with a hearing or something, but to extend a probation past the maximum limit if it's for the benefit of providing programming to the defendant. I wouldn't be opposed to that, because I can give a whole list of people that I know that do really well if somebody's monitoring what they're doing, but will be rearrested shortly if we don't.
Just to play devil's advocate, how frequently do you have someone who can't complete the programs with a double term of probation? Because if that's happening, aren't they generally getting into other troubles that land them back into court?
Yes, it depends though. Typically it's with the drug use offender, and we're doing the drug treatment and they do real well, that they might be clean for 5 months or 4 months, and then they relapse. And you start all over with the treatment program, and pretty soon they're not going out and that we know of committing new crimes like burglaries or thefts maybe, but they are certainly using drugs and needing treatment. And so there are a number of people like that who, let's say you have to be drug free for 6 months, to say you satisfy your treatment, and they don't do it. And so then do you want to say, well, we're going to let them go? Somebody tests positive for methamphetamine, are you going to revoke them? Probably not. You want to work with them. So do you want to take the resources of the probation office away from them by just terminating them unsuccessful, because you got to terminate them one way or the other because the time period is reached, or do you want to continue to try to work with them? For those of people who are actively monitoring their cases, and like in the drug court model or other different supervision models, my guess is a lot of people don't want to revoke those people when they're on probation for minor violations. But we also know that if we take supervision away with an unsuccessful discharge, that they'll be back with a new crime or something, or likely be maybe back with a whole new setup and have to deal with that all again. So, some people may be revoking them. We don't revoke people like that generally without making sure we've exhausted all the resources. Sometimes it takes longer than 2 years maybe, because you got a 1 year term and another extension for a year. Eventually you'd like to get them on down the road. I agree. You can't keep them on probation forever. And quite frankly, I guess as long as I could live with a definite termination date, because sometimes we have, if the legislature says 2 times is the max, that's it. That's their decision. We could work around it. I just want to make sure everybody knows that that's what's going on. Sometimes you want to extend them longer because you can provide them services and help them get better.
For most drug cases, you're looking at 36 months of probation, though, at double. So that's giving them 3 years. And at some point, I just feel like there should be a cutoff.
I agree. I get tired of seeing the same people over and over and over. I'd like to change the view every once in a while. I'd start with some new people, but yeah, if everybody thinks we need a hard deadline, or you could maybe put an exception in there where there's, under special circumstances, a court after hearing could extend it for more than that. I don't really have a position on it, but I think everybody needs to know what we're doing.
Well, the question to me is, if you haven't been able to accomplish anything in 3 years, what's another year going to do other than take up space for somebody new that's supposed to be coming in? I like the idea of a limit of probation, because some of these people are not going to benefit from 4 or 5 terms of probation if they haven't benefited from 2. But I don't know what that limit should be, but I do kind of like the idea of, if you're making some progress and you can see it and the judge says, yeah, let's extend it some more. I'd like the idea of having some sort of discretion there, but maybe unless you're saying that, Judge, if there's a limit, then the probationer could scam the system by saying, look, all I have to do is hold out for 2 more years and then I'm done.
I would echo, this is Shelley Williams. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
I would echo that if we have not made an impact on behavior change in that first 9, 12, 15 months, the likelihood that we are is pretty minimal. I think CSG is on here. I think I saw maybe CSG is on here, and they might be able to quote some data as far as length of supervision and the positive impact of time lengths.
Yep. Hi, Shelley. Jennifer Casella with the CSG Justice Center. I agree with you. You get into the discussion of maximum benefit. When we've run analyses of time on supervision until failure, usually about 75% of the failures happen within the first 12 to 24 months. So once you start getting past like 24, 36 months on supervision, you have really limited amount of failures after that amount of time on supervision, because most fail earlier on. So, having twice the original term would probably put you pretty much in that like time of maximum benefit, where you're going to have limited utility having it extended out further than that.
So I'm good with that. A maximum term is fine. The result is just so, and I would vote for that even, but the result is then you're going to have a choice between either a motion to revoke, which may not happen, or what I think will happen on a majority of these cases, if they don't involve special victims and that sort of thing, would be just terminate unsuccessful. And if the system is willing to have a certain number of people terminate unsuccessful on probation, and that that's what's going to happen, I'm fine with it. I think people just need to know what the result will be.
And I do agree. I mean, I think Jessica's got a valid point on 36-month probation. Double that. That's a long time. I'm not looking at it as that. I'm looking at maybe someone that's ordered to do a year probation. Maybe they have to do batterer's intervention, which is a 26-week program. They can't get that done due to finances, due to travel, and thinking that that we're looking at potentially even increasing the amount of batterer's intervention if it goes to a year. You can't get that done, and in 2 years. But it's not because they're violating, they're doing all they can. They just can't afford to do treatment. Are we willing just to let somebody off at that point? Other note is we see it all the time. Somebody might have a year probation. They get convicted of a new offense, but we're not going to send them to prison for that new offense. We're going to revoke and reinstate their probation, give them another chance. You're still limiting that time on probation. So I'm kind of on the same camp as Judge. If this is what the group decides and, legislatively, that's how it goes, we'll follow that. But there are going to be those that are trying to do probation. Maybe circumstances prevent them from getting everything completed, but then they're just going to get off probation without finishing.
I do think if they get a new offense and they get reinstated on probation, they will also have a probation on the new offense that could be extended to double that probation term. So I'm not sure that does much harm either.
It's accountability. I guess if you can keep committing new offenses and keep getting probation, is there ever accountability?
Yeah.
Presumably you won't keep getting probation though.
Yeah. Well, some of this could be resolved when you talk about the reoffending population. I mean, that'll be resolved by plea bargaining in the system itself, because the prosecutors would come in and say, "Well, we'll recommend probation on the new case because we're not, but you got to get a conviction." But and that way they can extend the probation period with a new period, as opposed to saying, "Well, we'll let this case go away if you agree to extend your probation." That's just a negotiation tactic that the attorneys dealing with the case will figure out pretty quickly if we have these limits. Okay, well, we have a proposal in front of us. We probably should, unless there's a language people want to change it, I hear people on both sides. Is there a motion to approve the proposal as presented?
I would so move.
Okay, Jessica Lendenning moves to approve the proposal as presented. Is
Second.
there a second?
Second, Boog.
Boog Hiberger seconds. Any further discussion? I'm going to try this with a voice vote, and then we may have to go back to a roll call. But we'll all in favor say aye.
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 Is there any opposed? Well, okay, thank you.
Judge, this is Spence. I'm going to abstain.
Okay.
I don't necessarily oppose and I don't necessarily approve, so I'm going to abstain.
We'll note the abstention. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the next good time proposal, Scott. I think you're muted still, Scott.
I think I just deleted it. Okay, so while I'm trying to get that pulled up, what we're looking at is, again, as we've discussed the good time credit several times during the course since the workshop. As you know, in felony circumstances, depending on the severity level of the offense, you potentially receive, based upon the severity level, either 15 or 20% good time credit. I also want to add that this particular bill also increases the program credit from 120 to 150 days. So let me sorry about that. I deleted it. Okay. Okay, so hopefully you can see that. So the main items here, of course, include instead of 15 to 20% good time credit based upon those, we have changed that to increasing for those person felonies up to 25% good time credit and up to 40% good time credit for non-person felonies. And then again, as I mentioned before, the rest of the bill indicates program credit changes from 120 to 150. We had previously at the workshop had discussed perhaps doing just a 5% increase for each of these categories. And then there was a request from DOC to indicate or whether we could find out and determine whether or not how much time was lost as a result of that. So we do have, I don't know whether is Randy on?
I'm here, Scott.
Okay. Randy was entrusted or something like that to go and find that. And I kind of wanted to at least, if you can kind of discuss your methodology and then what the findings were, to be able to share it with the members, please.
Yeah, try to do so. Thanks, Scott. Hi, everybody. So from the last meeting, I think I lost track of that date, but here a month or so ago, we had provided data on the average days, and the request was to have the percentage. Some discussion about doing sampling because of methodology concerns and labor concerns, but I was able to work with research and get us away from sampling. So we looked at years 18 through 22, so 5 years of data, and pulled out the time folks earned on average, the time folks lost on average, and there's two ways they lose it, of course. They either never earned it or they earned it, and then due to some other future behavior, they forfeited previously earned time to get to 100% of what they were eligible for. And then as Scott has highlighted on our screen there, then look at it by person felons versus non-person felonies. So explaining that hopefully half effectively or better. For those years, 74.8% of persons earned good time. The balance did not. They either didn't earn it at all or they lost it as described.
Randy, do you want me to, I know you had sent me that email, would that be easier to, as far as that table that you sent, or would that be appropriate?
Oh, I'll just go over it.
Okay.
So taking that into account, that breaks down to 74.8 earned it, 23.2 it was withheld, 1.9% forfeited it. That's a total of 100%. Then shifting towards program credit, of the 120, it's the same, of course, for anybody, 120, no other number you can earn. 84% of those folks earned that 120 days. So then I did a hypothetical for Scott last night. I did a couple more today, but so just using the 5% thought that emerged in your retreat back in, I believe, September, we need to go back to days, not percentages, again, to see the impact of that. So that 74.8% earned, those persons earned an average of 269 days. So if we elected as a state of Kansas and through the legislature, of course, their final call, a 5% increase in that is 13 days, less than 2 weeks. So that policy change is not, I guess in my lens, others might see it differently. 14 or 2 weeks or less off of your sentence is not very much. And I see a question there.
Go ahead.
I might be questioning your math. I mean, the increases are 5%, but for the 15%ers, that is a 33% increase, and for the 20%ers, that's a 25% increase. Is that making sense?
Well, so I did some other scenarios. So if a person went from current 20% to 40%, so they're earning basically twice what they got before, that looks like it'd be about 53 additional days, 53 earlier days that they would release. So less than 2 months earlier.
Okay, so when you did the calculations on the 5%, you were doing actual days, not just bumping that up by a certain percent.
Right.
Okay, great, thanks.
Right. Yeah, because it's not like we're just going to move it from 74.8% earned it up to 79.8% earned. We go back to the days to see the time impact on their sentence. I hope that helps make sense.
With the 74.8 number that you had, is that people who earned some good time credit or all good time credit? I'm assuming
believe
you
is what they
said
pulled.
some.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
If they earned any at all, some or all of it, and they're averaging getting to 269 days.
Thank you.
Then, because it was an interesting question, I asked them like the data. So again, just sticking to that percentage, that 74.8, person versus non-person really doesn't change much, interestingly, or I found it interesting. It's so person crimes, it's 75.3. Got to follow my chart over here, sorry. And then non-person 73.3. So for whatever reason, their criminal history isn't moving those numbers very much. It comes down to their behavior. Are they seeing this policy as a sufficient incentive to try to work hard, behave, be safe for our employees and fellow residents so they can get out sooner?
So what you're saying, Randy, is the non-person crimes actually pulled down the average percentage of those receiving good time credit.
True, slightly.
So more time, good time was withheld too for the non-person crime offenders.
Yeah, and how one thing I thought of when I looked at that was I hear us talk in different committees for many years. The people who seem to frustrate us and be difficult aren't always necessarily more serious criminals. It's more those difficult, chronic, sometimes if not often, it's those low end offenders that are quite difficult. So maybe that's kind of playing out in this data set a little bit from 75 to 73. One guess.
Have you ever thought about graduating this and accelerating your accumulation of credits the closer you get to your date? So later on, you're earning 2 or 3 days or something of that nature. So the longer, the faster you learn it. Has any thought been given to that rather than just a uniform accumulation?
I don't recall this body or others considering that, no. Better historians than I here, I suspect, too.
So are there any other questions about this particular proposal? Again, this is one we'd previously discussed. Do we have any motions to address the proposal that's on the table at this point?
Honor?
Lou?
I would go ahead and renew my motion to modify what's in front of us by striking the highlighted part there and instead, well, and I'm not sure exactly how the revised will do it, but instead of what's proposed there as 25% for a person, 40% for non-person, we just modify the existing statute by changing the 15% number on line 24 to 20%, and the numbers at the 20% on lines 26 and 31 to 25%.
Okay, so you want to go to 20, 15 will go to 20 and 20 will go to 25, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, the current draft won't get through committee, won't get a hearing. I mean, it won't get out of committee.
Okay. Any other questions, or is there a second to Boo's motion?
I'll second Booth's motion.
Judge Sexton? Any other discussion? We'll try a voice vote first. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Was there, anybody,
No.
is that Jessica Domi?
Yes, please note. Thank you.
Okay. Was that the only nay? Okay. Note it passed with Jessica's objection, and we'll move on to the next one. Thank you.
Can I clarify something real quick for the
Sure.
drafting of that one, Judge Fowler?
Yes.
So, and I'm confident that it was intentional, but you're moving it up there, meaning that it's gonna be applied retroactive, just at a lower percent increase, right?
My motion was, I assume we have to change the date for crimes committed on or after July 1st, 2023. That was intended.
Okay, so you just want it to be prospective still. So we won't really go up into those lines and change the 15.
Right.
We'll just change, yes, okay, so
Just dealing with
prospective.
the paragraph D with current date.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Thank you, Natalie. That obviously makes a difference, big difference.
Okay, Scott, let's move to the last one. I guess this is Jessica's proposal as well, so either one of you want to address that?
The secretary and my proposal, not
Okay.
just mine. I don't want to steal his thunder. This was
Apologize.
drafted by the Department of Corrections a few years back. This is a clarification on those who are on post-release supervision and are incarcerated for a period of time, where that credit goes when they're convicted and sentenced on a new case. Recall that they were essentially getting credit on both because it wasn't tolling, or it was tolling because they weren't serving it, but they were in custody. So those post-release sentences were expiring and timing out, but they were still getting credit on the new cases. And so this is to clarify that so that the time goes to the proper case. I believe the way it's drafted, the time goes to the new case that they're in for, and then Department of Corrections, once they get back, can address the post-release time on the old case.
Anybody have any questions about this proposal?
Judge, I don't have any questions about it. I'm familiar with it, but I just want to comment, and I think I have commented on this before. It will help clarify the situation. There's a lot of confusion about it today. A lot of questions about it out, but from whether it be defense attorneys, prosecutors, our folks, and I really think this would clean that up and standardize it for folks, bring a better understanding of what we're going to do.
Okay, thank you. I'll entertain a motion to approve the proposal.
I'd make the motion.
Secretary Zamuda, do we have a second?
I'll second Jessica.
Jessica Domi, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. Moving right along, looks like. Scott, agency report.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for that. I appreciate the speed at which we actually were able to get through that. I just have a couple items. You've been in your email, you received the usual letter from the secretary, as well as the monthly monitoring report. Just a quick summary to kind of give you a perspective. As of end of last month, 82% capacity, not staff capacity, but capacity. That was 81% last year at this time. For males, it's 82%. Again, it was 81% last year. 76% right now for capacity for females, and it was 78% last year at this time. So that just kind of gives you a perspective on that. As you'll see in the monthly monitoring report, we are for the most part on track as far as the projections with overall with a 1.1% error rate. And of course, John tracks that and is checking populations usually on a daily basis. But the monthly monitoring report certainly gives you that comparative analysis between the projected and the actual population for this past November. We are still, if you recall, we projected 6% increase for the females for this year. We're at about 5.2% error rate at this point, but again, sometimes it comes down to, as you know, numbers that since we have so few numbers on the female side, that small changes will actually significantly affect the error rate on this. So that's, again, we continue to monitor that. Thankfully, the males occupy 92%, somewhere in that range as far as the total population. So they take up most of that. So I wanted to, yes, sorry.
I'm sorry, I have a couple questions.
Sure.
First, as it relates to the monthly monitoring report, and if John's on here, I don't know if we have the data yet, but is this decrease somewhat attributable to the removal of the sanctions that we saw such an increase of the female population on? Is that actually adjusting these numbers, or do we know yet?
It's pretty tough to tell right now without getting it down into the details of what's going on. Over the summer, the female population was really moving up like crazy. And then it just kind of leveled off. And I'm not sure if it's sanctions or just, but a dozen or so females in a month is a huge number, where on the males that's a number that doesn't really make a difference. So, it's worth watching. If it rebounds and continues to go up, the numbers will probably be starting to regulate themselves. And the next 2 months, I believe on the projections, they're just the ebb and flow of how our system works. We're actually seeing a little bit of a downward trend on the male side, not as much quite on the female, but so the numbers will probably be even better next month unless something wild happens over the Christmas holiday.
Thank you, John. And then Scott, if I could ask the secretary about the prison capacity letter.
Sure.
Secretary, the staffed capacity of the female is 948, but the bed capacity is 936. Is that a typo, or are we staffing for more for the females? Do you see what I'm looking at the
Yeah,
bottom?
I see what you're saying. It might be a typo, but our staffing at the Topeka Correctional Facility is our best staffing and we may be overhired there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Thank you.
All right. The next item has to do with presentations. We had, as many of you know, there are interim committees that meet all throughout the time when the legislature has adjourned and before the new session starts. And one of those is the Committee on Corrections and Juvenile Justice, of which our very own Representative Heiberger is a member of. We were asked to present, and I know it's every meeting that I do, but I don't like to toot our commission horn too much. But I got to tell you that the interim committee was allowed 3 days to meet. Quite a bit of that, they were out looking at a drug court and then touring Shawnee County Community Corrections. And but in that time, the first day we had Spence and Shelley testifying regarding their respective job duties in court services and community corrections. The next day, Judge Sexton was testifying on behalf of the Judicial Council for the sex offender committee that he was on. I also testified regarding Senate Bill 123 because they wanted substance abuse treatment items. Jermaine Wilson was also there that particular day to testify regarding workforce and the development that DOC has and the all of the great programs that they have for in-facility vocational training that they're doing. And then the secretary was the next day. So we literally had a majority of the speakers, I would say, speaking to the committee, and that speaks, I think, very, very well for this particular commission. I was very proud. You learn new things about your colleagues all the time, and when you have the cream of the crop to work with, it's a nice situation for us to have the caliber of individuals here. So that was we provided plenty of information as far as Senate Bill 123 is concerned to the committee. I did indicate to them the participation rate regarding the RAFT program, and they were a little disappointed with that, but I told them we're already looking into January, February to do some RAFT training to get the word out even more fully. And so that has already been in the works with Kira and Francis. So any questions about that? I would, if you have interest, I would, the legislative website, their YouTube channel has all 3 of those days on there. Fantastic information from all of those individuals and more. And it kind of gives you a great snapshot into what's going on with DOC and probation. So I think if you're still in need of desk reference manuals, we've got those available, and they have been available. You can go to the website sentencing.ks.gov and order those. We have an order form, so if your jurisdiction needs that, just let us know, and we're happy to. We have laminates as well that are for this year as well. I had talked to you about the budget before. We did appeal a couple issues on the budget and had an opportunity. Kim and I did have a chance to discuss that with the director of the division of the budget. And these were specific items that I won't go into too much, but they are maintenance fees that we pay to Beacon that for the RAFT program. And then the other one will be a continuing maintenance fee for Domo, who is the vendor for the electronic journal entry. And that was set up for 2024. So that was one of the things that they originally did not recommend to the governor, and that's why we were doing the appeal. So I wanted to just kind of put a placeholder in. We will probably be receiving a new legislative member in the near future with Representative Barker not coming back this next year. There will be a Republican on the House side that will be appointed. And so I will let you all know as soon as I know who that individual is. And if you have suggestions, please don't hesitate to email, text, call me, and I'm happy to see what we can do with House leadership to make some recommendations. Just coming up, as you know, as I'm sure you are with the rest of with your shops, our office will be kind of in holiday mode here starting soon, and it'll give plenty of time for folks to spend time with their families and travel if they need to. In January, as some of you know, legislative session starts on Monday, January 9th. And so we'll be off and running with that as far as the bed space impacts, as well as the building reductions that we've been working on the last couple of months here. Keep in mind that the January meeting will be, as we have traditionally done, will be on Fridays to help include the legislative members, since they're normally running full speed Monday through Thursday. So it will be on Friday, January 20th. And I'll just close with I thank you all for all the things that this past year that you brought to the commission, all of your input and all of your counsel. Your engagement certainly makes the state criminal justice system better than it is. And so my thanks to you for that, and happy holidays.
Thank you, Scott. Does anybody have any questions for Scott?
I would just like to say, Scott, the article that you and Kira wrote, I get this magazine, I don't ask for it, Kansas prosecutor. I'm always kind of embarrassed to have it hanging around because I'm not sure defense attorneys would like that, but you folks penned an article in there on the raft diversion, new tool for the prosecutor. Well done. That is an extremely underutilized tool. That tool with drug court almost walk hand in hand. And we have a prosecutor here, Sarah Ikena, who's been very active in that regard. And I think we'll be up to 4 of those here shortly that she's done. And it is an extremely good tool. And I hope it starts getting used.
Okay, thank you. Hey, Scott, I just emailed to you an article from the National Association of Drug Court Professionals on medical marijuana and the different, it's kind of a survey of how different states treat medical marijuana in the supervision arena of probation and drug courts. It's got different treats, it kind of just describes what everybody's done and the problems that exist. If you want to share that with the rest of the commission, you can, and certainly our legislators as well. I know we're getting closer to medical marijuana. I can't say it'll pass this year, but it looks like it's coming. And I just want to make sure that everybody has that information because I think it's real important that if any bill addresses the supervision for medical marijuana in the bill, so that we can and there's different ways. It's kind of self-explanatory. I don't need to get into the article, but it explains different ways the different states have treated medical marijuana when people are on probation. And I want to make sure that we kind of keep our hand on that so we can have a drug treatment program that might actually work, maybe, have some supervision requirements. And so I sent that to you and you could send it out. And I know Senator Haley or Representative Heiberger might be interested in too, because they'll certainly be addressing that maybe this session.
I'll be happy.
on the interim medical marijuana committee, and that definitely is an issue, and there will be a bill, and we definitely need to address that issue.
Okay. Anybody that has anything else to be brought before the commission at this time? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Heiberger.
Okay. Second,
Haley, second.
hey, Haley, okay, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody want to stay? Okay, thank you. We'll see you next January and have Merry Christmas.
Bye, everybody. Merry
Happy holidays.
Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Happy New Year. Good to see
Bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye.